What was the most awkward NSFW moment of your life? At a lifestyle club, enjoying the pool in the nude, I noticed someone floating by the stairs who isn't moving. Being a former lifeguard and advanced first aid certified, I rush over. This woman is unconscious. I try to wake her, do a sternum rub, no pain response. She's breathing, but unresponsive, so I call for help, while holding her to make sure she doesn't go underwater. Someone calls 911. Someone else finds the friend she was with. Paramedics arrive. I explain the situation, and they take her away. Management comes over to talk to me, thank me for my help, and have me fill out an incident report for their records. At some point during this whole ordeal, I remember I'm naked. And this is a bizarre situation. Story 2. I was at Sephora trying to buy something. I don't wear a lot of makeup at all, but I had the FabFitFun boxes, and something came in there that I actually liked. Sephora was the only place I could think of for a replacement, but I was smart and took a picture of the product. Went to show her and swiped the wrong way, and there happened to be a picture of my tits. I'm fairly certain time stopped. I said, now that we know each other this closely, can you help me find this? And showed her the right picture. I haven't been back since. Story 3. I hooked up with a lady on Craigslist back when you could still do that. 350 pounds of albino queen, my friends, and I was all about it. I took the bus on over to Harlem, got to her building, and it was an 18-floor walk-up that I cleared in record order, 3 steps at a time. An adventurous lad was I. So I got in there, she answers, wearing pretty much nothing. She really gave off sort of an Earth Mother vibe, which I was pretty into. She seemed very wise and warm and pleasant. This was going to be a pretty great night. We're on the couch in the living room when she stops mid-beige and asks me if I hear footsteps outside the door, and I did. So she says the most movie cliche thing anyone could possibly say. Oh, Schmidt, my husband is back early. There was, of course, no previous mention of a husband. It didn't look like there was anyone's stuff around but hers. So what do I do? She says. Wait on the roof. She got up and pointed toward the window. The fire escape. Only it didn't go down. It was stuck shut for some reason. There was a ladder up to the roof, though. She pretty much pushed me out the window as the key was turning in the lock, and I had to scramble up the ladder because the fire escape was clearly visible from the window. There was a door on the roof, but first it was locked, and second, where would I go? My clothes were in her apartment, shoved under the couch. Totally butt-ass balls out naked, on a roof in Harlem. I was out there for about 2 hours, and in those 2 hours, 2 things happened. First, her husband came home drunk and ready to kex, and they did, and I could clearly hear the whole thing. Second, one of those tourist helicopters flew by overhead, close enough that I was plainly visible to everyone on board. The pilot waved at me and gave me a thumbs up, and one of the women in the back pulled out a camera and snapped a bunch of photos. So presumably, somewhere out there, some lady in Texas or Nebraska or Iowa still has some photos laying around of me with my balls hanging out. Story 4. My wife and I met when we were in high school. We had kex every chance we got as we didn't get to see each other often outside school. One time, we were at my house and just finished up. I was thirsty and thought the coast was clear to go to the kitchen and get some water naked. As soon as I walked out, my mom came out of her room and saw. I quickly ducked behind the couch and crawled back to my room. My wife still likes to bring it up. Story 5. I was in the middle of a run in the summer of 2005. Hot day, 7 miles into a 12-miler. I really needed to go number 2, and I found a little restroom to use at a park. An old man in his 70s follows me in. There are no doors on the stalls. He asks me a series of very personal questions as he watches me defecate, never looking away from me. I went as quick as I could and got out of there. It was weird in the moment, but it was really gross to think about later as I processed it. Story 6. Her dad walked in a second after I shot my load on her face. I was genuinely tempted to let him grab his shotgun and put me out of my misery right then and there. He told her mom she thought it was hilarious. Story 7. I was at one of those on-land surfing thingies at a water park, lost my footing, and got caught in the water. My shorts slid all the way to my knees. I'm holding them with one hand, trying to stand up with the other, and drowning in front of my wife and kids. I don't know who was more embarrassed, me or the teens operating the ride. There I was, full moon on display, trying to cover my peen and pull my soaking wet shorts up while coughing out gallons of water. Story 8. The stairwell of the Hilton Hotel in Minneapolis, man. I was 13 getting my first glow job from a girl my age. Suddenly, we were interrupted by a door opening about 2 floors up. I scrambled to put my penis away and zip up my pants while whoever opened the door begins running full speed down the stairs. To my surprise, a middle-aged man rounds the corner dressed in a full-on BDSM outfit complete with a mask, crotchless panties, and handcuffs, etc. He was laughing like a maniac, and his flaccid penis was flapping around in the open as he ran past us. The whole hotel was mostly booked by people attending the Eckankar seminar. Eckankar is the cult I grew up in, so it was probably an Ekist who ran past us that day. This happened about 13 years ago now. Story 9. I went camping with a bunch of friends, and we all slept in the same tent. My brother was with us, and he ended up hooking up very intensely slash hardcore with a girl, while they were less than a foot away from all of us. I woke up to a kick in the head, and after hearing loud moaning, I couldn't fall back to sleep. They changed positions, did mouth stuff, which were these horrible sloppy noises, for over 2 hours. They probably started hooking up at 2 a.m. and finished when the sun rose, and I was awake, pretending to be asleep for just about all of it. And I swear, I think I felt Clum hit my sleeping bag near the end. Once they finished banging, a friend in our group played Birthday Kex on his phone and applauded the two, mentioning his favorite moments and how he was proud of both of them, as I awkwardly continued to pretend sleeping. Most awkward night of my life. Story 10. I was in Sicily and it was a hot day. I was wearing a military uniform, so it made it even hotter. I gambled on a fart, then panic set in. OMG, did I shart? Or is my ass sweaty? So I thought I better go do a courtesy wipe and get this figured out. Went to the bathroom and I vividly remember locking the door. I didn't bother sitting down because I was just wiping, so I pulled my pants down, some bent over wiped and mother ducker, door blasts open. I turned my head and see this Italian guy closing his eyes as hard as he could. He kept saying, "Mamma mia." So he got a front row seat to my starfish and coin purse. Story 11. I thought it would be a good idea to try out my mom's vibrator, because I found it in a drawer in their room while she and my stepdad were away. I also found a huge-ass dildo, probably like 50 centimeters long, stuck it on the mirror, and take a picture of it. I then posted the picture on my Instagram story, trying to be funny. A week later, I realized people probably thought that it was mine. Oh, and my mother realized I found her little toy bag, confronted me telling me not to go into their room anymore. So embarrassed. Story 12. In post-divorce dalliance. Sweet guy. We finally get to fooling around and suddenly he whispers, "Stop, stop." I stopped and looked up to see he was as white as a ghost. "What's wrong?" I asked, and he placed my hand on his chest. I could feel his heart racing as fast as a heart could possibly beat. His eyes are closed now, and he whispers, "Arrhythmia." "Where is your medicine?" I asked, calmly. "At home." It took a while for him to regain a normal heart rate. I wanted to call an ambulance, but he said no. On follow-up, he described our interaction as a 12. I thought we were warming up around a 4. We agreed any further dating might kill him and remained friends for a very long time. Story 13 was about 2 years ago when my sister had her boyfriend with her. Our rooms are next to each other, and I was playing Counter-Strike. My whole screen wobbled, so I didn't hit any more shots. No, her bed is not on my wall. I was so angry then that I knocked on the wall until they stopped. I then continued to play. Lol. Story 14. Had Kex with someone in an open relationship. 3/4 of the way into the second round, she asks if I want to stick around to watch that Mitchell and Webb show once we're done. Baffled, but not really opposed, I agree, and we finish up. While we're on the couch, her husband comes home. Cue the most awkward 45 minutes of my life while we all sit in mostly silence watching British comedy programming. Story 15. My older sister walked in on me beating my meat when I was 15, 16, and she laughed at me and wanted to know what I was watching. I just started throwing things at her off my bed until she left because I couldn't stand up and physically evict her from the room for obvious reasons. Always locked my door after that. Story 16. Not extremely NSFW, but somewhat and probably more awkward for my father. I was out late with my friend when I was around 16 years old. We had been smoking, drinking, and were slightly high, walking down the street. As a joke, we began to kiss each other, repeating dramatic, romantic lines we had heard in movies. I stumbled and he came down with me and we sort of laid there, laughing so hard that my stomach was hurting. For some reason, this was enough for us to get up and run somewhere to try kissing for real. I hadn't kissed another boy before at that point, and we ended up by someone's garden, kissing by the fence. We paused when we heard screaming and a few gardens away from us. My own father was running out of a garden in his trousers and was waving his shirt behind him. The arguing and screaming continued, and it took my brain a moment to realize I just caught him after he had been caught sleeping with another woman. He was still married to my mother, which was something I yelled at him later for. He sort of stopped and stared at me, and I just stared back. I was laughing out of fear and how weird I felt because we had both caught each other doing something neither of us should have been doing. He yelled a few things at me, mainly that I was a disgrace. And my friend, for some reason, just blurted out, "Your dad's balls are out," and even pointed. I ended up laughing harder, and my dad finally stopped yelling and just continued getting dressed and leaving. Story 17. When a boy tried charging into the girls' locker room just to see if he could find me naked and photograph it to show to all his friends. But when he found me, I was dressed, and soon he had several girls blocking the exit to the locker room, and he realized he was in big trouble. Story 18. In ROTC, when I was in high school, my friend was in a rush helping me try on pants. I'm not sure on the exact details, but she had me take my pants off and try different sizes. We found the right pair, but the zipper got stuck on some loose cloth string, so she got on her knees to try and rip the loose strings off the zipper. She was saying things like, "Come on, damn, I'm pulling it!" Another girl walked in on us from behind me. It looked really bad. Thankfully, nothing ever happened. We never got in trouble. I think a higher-up asked us about it, but that was pretty much it. Story 19. I was preparing to go on a run and I was stretching in the basement on a mat wearing my briefs. I did this stretch where on your back, you raise your feet up and bend it back to the point where your toes are touching the floor and they're near the top of your head. My sister came down to the basement freezing and screamed my name in laughter. She usually laughs at me whenever she sees me in that stretching position, but the scream was new. She told me there was a hole in my pants. I tried to feel the bottom of my briefs and I could only feel my testicles. My sister literally just sees me with my ass out, touching my nuts. I immediately panic and cover myself, tell her to close her eyes as I fled to my room. I was really embarrassed and confused because I thought I got rid of that ripped pair. Turns out, I probably just threw it in the laundry basket accidentally. Story 20. My husband and I just moved into another state, and we were living with his grandma. To save a bit of money, also to find our own place. It was the middle of the night we just got done having some of the best keks. Yes, I know how to keep quiet, BC. I rather not talk about my moans with his grandma, and I was walking out to use the bathroom. And as I was walking out, I said to my husband, I'm not sure who I feel coming out of me, you or I. His grandma was right outside our door standing there. It was the middle of the night. Needless to say, I'm happy we moved TF out of there. Edit, y'all, I have a husband I mistyped by adding an SL Mao. I only stick to one person, and that's my husband, my bad. Story 21. I was freshly 18, just joined Tinder that week. 3-match, I invite a boy over and we go for a walk. We find a hidden spot in a nearby woods and start going at it. I was severely depressed at the time and only told my parents I went for a walk. I was gone over 2 hours. They thought I went and killed myself. My dad walked up and found the guy balls deep in me in doggy style. Worst moment of my life. Story 22 was having keks on her living room floor came inside her. Some came out, didn't notice. Like 5 minutes later, her family comes home. Close call. Her mom steps on some of my clum, and since it was an Asian household barefoot, she stopped, looks at it and goes, huh, and keeps walking. GF looks at me, and I'm just looking at the TV the whole time in silence. She was like, did you notice what she stepped on? Don't ever know if the mom knew what it was. Story 23. Awkward? My wife and I had this couple we were friendly with. Sometimes we had them over for dinner and perhaps cards afterwards with some adult beverages. One such evening, the other husband had entirely too much to drink. For that matter, so did my wife. The other wife did not drive. So I put my wife to bed, tossed the other guy over a shoulder, took him out to his car, along with his wife, who was a little tipsy but still mobile enough, drove them home, carried the guy upstairs to their bed and dumped him there. He did not even wake up. Downstairs, his wife thanked me and insisted on offering me a drink before I left. I was still only at the mild buzz state, as I did not typically drink until I was full-on drunk. I was usually the one who stayed sober enough to take care of others who had too much. Now this lady was a beauty, a lingerie model for Fredericks of Hollywood. As we had that drink, she kept getting closer to me on the couch, and finally draped a leg over mine, cuddled up, and said something about H. How her husband would never wake up in his condition. Went on to say he habitually drank too much, and thus didn't really satisfy her in bed. Going on, she kissed my cheek and said she'd always found me keksy. That was when I untangled myself from her, somewhat regretfully, because she was a real temptation and said there was no way. Sorry, I was leaving. Understand, my wife and I had certain agreements that allowed keks with others, but only if agreed upon mutually before the event, each and every time. There was no blanket agreement, so this was a no-go for me, not a chance. But geez, at that moment I had a harden that would not quit and dearly wanted to accept her offer. She moved away a bit, saying she did not believe I meant what I was saying and proceeded to strip. Yes, I stayed to watch. Then she walked over and blocked the door with her body, gave me a big smile and said, "Now do you still want to leave?" I moved the astonished-looking lady aside, hating it, and walked out and back to my place. Awkward was not an adequate work. Story 24. My old bosses, married couple, were moving and knew my boyfriend at the time, and I were looking for some extra cash. So they offered to pay us to pack up their house since they were already out of state. They didn't really give much instructions other than throw everything in boxes and make sure they're labeled. Cut to my poor, shy boyfriend, finding a huge stash of Keks toys in their bedroom. One of my bosses came back in town shortly after that and asked me how the packing went at work, so I told her which rooms we got done. As soon as I said bedroom, she stopped short and was like, bedroom? Which parts? So I rattled off. Oh, you know, the closet, master bath, the nightstands. We had a good relationship and she was a cool boss, but I had never seen her so beet red and embarrassed. It was so awkward, but it was really on her for not telling us to steer of any particular areas. Truly not safe for work. Story 25. I decided to take a nap at my dad's house while I waited for my mom to pick me up after a closing shift at work. However, my stepbrother and his girlfriend ended up coming home while I was napping. Hey, Hele, I was in my bed. They got in a mini argument about an ex-friend of my stepbrother while they were watching a show. An hour or so later, I wake up and I hear them having keks. I saw them naked and heard furious creaking. I think there was moaning and Schmidt. It was hard to tell cause of the creaking of the bed and the noise of the TV. I didn't know what to do in this situation, so I just froze until I worked up the courage to state that I was going to leave the room and did like a speedy gremlin crawl run for the door while trying not to look. He never said sorry for what had happened. Granted, it's been months since I've been over, and the few times I've seen him, it was awkward. Story 26. Oh God, my parents used to bring this story up at parties until I got old enough to tell them to stop. Now I'm even older. It's come full circle and is funny again. When I was little, I was obsessed with stickers and had one particularly precious rainbow alphabet sticker set. I would leave different color letters all over the house in unexpected places. My dad is a cyclist and once returned home after a particularly grueling ride in the pouring rain. He asked my mom to bring him a towel and started undressing at the door so he didn't track mud and rainwater into the house. So he's standing in the foyer, soaking wet and nude, and my toddler self comes over and says, "I want my purple O." My dad has no idea what I'm talking about and is embarrassed to be nude in front of me, so he tells me to leave, but I'm adamant. He says he doesn't know anything about a purple O. I say, "Yes, you do, you have it," and point at his dingling. One of the purple letter sets had made its way onto the towel or something because apparently there it was, a perfect little purple O right on the tip of his penis, perfectly encircling his urethra. I'm just thankful I have no memory of it. And no, I did not get my sticker back. Story 27. Not me, but my then girlfriend's sister. Girlfriend's now wife. Sister was seeing a guy. She's white, he's not. I only mention it because it comes up later. He had a reputation, and it was well known he could be in prawn with the equipment he had. She went out with him one night and came back the next day walking very gingerly, like stooped a little and walking very slowly. She said, "I think I may need to go to the hospital." We took her to the hospital and we're assuming the worst, and we're kind of joking about it while still being as sympathetic as we can be. We asked the normal questions you might ask. Are you bleeding? Did he tear something? No, and no. Nurse is doing the triage, asks the same thing. Same answers. Sister finally came out with it. It was her bum that hurt. Well, did he slip and pop into the back door accidentally? No, they took her to get an x-ray and it turns out her tailbone is broken. He slipped out during a rather vigorous session, and when he was on the in-stroke, he broke her coccyx. Now she's tiny, about 5 4 inches and petite. He is 6 6 and by her own words, his equipment is the length and thickness of her forearm. The story finally comes out that he was hitting it hard from behind, asterisk, and she was taking it asterisk. He slipped, broke her tailbone on the in-stroke. They paused, did a quick assessment, and resumed. And asterisk, he continued hitting it, just as hard asterisk. She didn't even feel the pain until the next morning. But wait, the story gets better. A few weeks later, we're all at Thanksgiving dinner with their very upright and proper white racist parents. Her mom keeps asking how she broke her tailbone, and sister keeps trying to skirt the subject. But mom will not leave it alone. And sister is boiling mad, and sister is finally slamming her hands on the table. She yells out, "A huge black penis broke my ass, Mom. Is that what you want to hear? I hooked up with a guy last month, and I was having keks by a black guy with a cock bigger than your holiday candlesticks, and he broke my ass with his huge black cock. I will never forgive my sister-in-law for the pain she put me through, having to hold the belly-aching laughter that was demanding to come out of me. I don't even know what else was said, but for the first time since I'd been dating the woman who became my wife, and the only time in the ensuing 20 years that I'm aware of, her mom was completely, blessedly silent. Eventually, somehow, the night ended, and I laughed about that for asterisk weeks, asterisk. I'd be going about my day and would remember and start laughing again at nothing. People would ask me what I was laughing at, and I was only too happy to tell them. Story 28 was playing games around a laptop in class. More specifically, the impossible quiz, remember that, was facing the laptop, but my legs were facing outwards. And a girl sat on my lap, although I don't know who it was because there was like 6 of us hovering around this laptop and blocking my head entirely. Well, I promptly grew a little stiffy, but they actually stayed for another minute before hopping off. Never found out who it was, though. It's a core memory at this point. Story 29. A few, I won't say, but one time I didn't jack off for a month, then met up with my Jeff who was out of state doing family stuff. We finally got together, and I lasted maybe 6 seconds in her mouth and started clumming. She pulled it out and pointed it at my face on accident, and I ultra jizzed all over my own mouth and face and farted. Was trying to dodge it, but it followed me. I had so much jizz on my mouth I couldn't ask her to get paper towels or whatever, and I came so hard I could barely move an inch. She laughed until she cried and left me there like a clum-soaked, wilted flower. Story 30. A friend of mine and I decided to hook up in the spur of the moment, and we were a little intense with it, which meant noises and crashing sounds and creaking bed, and after we finished, my friend's grandma stood at the bottom of the stairs and yelled up, "Do you guys want water? It sounds kind of rough. Enjoy the youth." I was MORTIFIED. Story 31. Before we were married, my soon-to-be wife and I were leaving a Schmitty movie. Prom night, I think. Didn't even finish it. We had extra time, so decided we needed to do the nasty. But I had too many visitors at home and her house wasn't close, so we drove around the block to some newly constructed and unoccupied townhomes. Carkex wasn't anything new to us, so we made camp in the darkest area we could find and started having fun. Well, turned out not all of those homes were unoccupied. Someone drove up with their high beams on as she's bouncing up and down on me in the back seat. We stopped and made eye contact with their headlights, then stared at each other for a minute. No one really cares, right? We thought wrong because about 5 minutes later, as I'm about to finish, a squad car rolls up. I stuffed my member inside my pants as I was clumming. Horrible way to orgasm. Both officers asked us to get out of the car. My wife was young, 19 then, and she looked even younger in the face, so they immediately thought she was underage. Once we showed our IDs, one of the officers gave us the most disgusted look and told us to find a more private place to have kexy time. The other officer kept looking at my wife in her bra and panties, and then me with jizz soaking through my jeans and just smiles like he was proud of me or something. As they left, we got back in the car and drove back to my house. Carkex became the most planned, spontaneous event going forward. Story 32. Do you remember those Listerine breath strips? If not, they were a thin film that you'd put on your tongue, and it would slowly dissolve with a very strong mint flavor, like toothpaste or mouthwash. Anyways, my roommate told me about an idea he had where he thought it would probably feel amazing if, when he was eating out his girlfriend, he had one in his mouth. Like the minty blast would just send her over the edge and blow her mind. And hey, if nothing else, at least both he and her pussy wouldn't have bad breath, right? So, brave adventurer that I am, I thought I'd try this with my girlfriend. I'm an idiot, as you're about to realize, but I was at least smart enough to understand that it would be a pretty bad surprise. So I told her beforehand, and at least made sure she was all in. So we got into it, and I prepared for my trip to Gashville by putting a Listerine strip on my tongue. My plan was to take it easy and test the waters. But what I hadn't realized is that, when they're straight out of the package and still dry, they latch on to anything wet almost magnetically. So I gave her a lick, and the still dry strip just melted onto her clit like shrink wrap. And I had about a second where I thought, well, okay, that's not what I meant to happen, but maybe she'll like this, before she bolted up, smacking the back of my head. Yeah, the film strip peeled off easy enough, but her clit was still coated in Listerine, and that Schmidt burns. She grabbed the blankets to barely cover herself and bolted off through the living room, past my roommate, and into the bathroom. I followed her, feeling terrible for how badly my little erotic plan had backfired. She was okay after a few minutes in the shower, just splashing water up into her cooch. But yeah, I wasn't allowed anywhere near her minty fresh nether regions for a long time. Story 33. My first official date with an ex was hanging out at his house. My ex is an amputee above his knee. We were fooling around on his couch while Deuce Bigelow Male Gigolo was playing on TV. And all of a sudden I hear, "You may only have one leg, but it's the most beautiful leg in the world." Almost lost my Schmidt and had to excuse myself to the bathroom for a few minutes. Story 34. All my ex-boyfriend were mediocre and terrible in bed. I figured that was just normal. When my boyfriend went down for the first time, he actually got me off, and I swear I went cross-eyed while trying not to scream super loud and then poked him in the eye. I felt so bad. Story 35. Man, I've never been able to tell this story, so here we go. I was a dumb teenager. I did a lot of stupid stuff, but I somehow got away with a lot of it because I was really good at hiding things. So I invited a guy over to my house to hang out, and he stayed for dinner. But our great master plan was to have him sneak back into my room when he left after dinner. My house was a one-story home with my bedroom window at the far end of the house. I snuck the guy back into my room to spend the night since my parents wouldn't have allowed it. Well, we got busy, and my mom knocked on my bedroom door. No locks on my door. I told her, "Hold on," and I told the guy to hide in my closet. Well, he was having trouble getting in, and the lights were off. My mom comes in, and the guy was half in the closet, and it was half open. He kept trying to slide into it fully while she was talking to me. She kept hearing the closet moving, and then looked at it. The guy's leg was sticking out of the part that wasn't closed, and she looked at it, and I'm like, I think a mouse is in there jiggling the door. And she couldn't really see very well since it was dark, and her vision wasn't the best at that time, and so she just agreed with me, finished what she wanted to tell me, and then left. The entire time she was talking to me, I was naked underneath the covers, praying to God she wouldn't notice the closet, turn on the light, and see that I was naked. And the guy was in my closet, and he had never ended up leaving. In the morning, he left early and snuck out my window. So we ended up getting away with it. I never did that again. Also, the guy was kind of nuts. So our relationship, thankfully, didn't end up working out. Story 36. When my religious mom caught me watching porn, still the worst day of my life. Not because she was angry or punished me, but because how upset she was. She sobbed as though someone has died, and I felt so ashamed, lol. Story 37. I had a very odd neighbor whose method of inducting people into the apartment complex was to knock of their door wearing almost nothing, just BDSM leathers with his dong visible in see-through lingerie. He asks if he can borrow a cup of flour, holding up his measuring cup. We did a lot of drugs together that summer. Story 38. I was out with some friends at a bar Sunday afternoon. My friend's girlfriend had just given birth to their son a few weeks prior, and she was breastfeeding. We both walk up to order a drink. I see that she's quite drunk already. I don't remember what we were talking about, but all of the sudden pulls her tit out and squeezes and tries to squirt milk on me. It came out quick and she had some distance, but I ran out of there and didn't say anything. Next day, I tell my wife and felt really weird about it. That's when I understood the weird guilt victims of Kexel harassment/assault feel when not wanting to talk/report it. I never planned on getting her in trouble. Story 39. Okay, so was having Kex. Finished up in missionary. As we both readjust to cuddle, I ended up kneeing her dead on the clit. I mean, like that didn't know an object was there kind of impact. Leg had not planned on meeting resistance during path of travel. First time I've seen a girl curled up like she had been hitting the balls. I apologized profusely and we laughed about it after the pain went away. Area. Awareness, my friends. Bonus story because I just remembered. Only one night stand I've ever had. Met someone through Occupid. Turns out the person in the profile was looking for a guy for a friend of hers. I didn't see red flags about this, so I met up with both of them. We smoke, we drink. Occupid match goes to bed. Me and friend get saucy. She gives me a condom that's too big for me, but I'm not about to let that stop me. Slip that sucker on and go. We were doing doggy and we're going to switch positions. So I pull out. Cue the sound of a rubber glove being snapped against a wrist. I look down. The condom was still inside her and I was not. Somehow she didn't notice. So like a damn cartoon, I go to pull the condom out and it just stretches as I pull it. Finally snaps out like she gave up on tug of war. What was that? I then proceeded to explain what happened, which killed the mood, and I was sent out the door. I left my wallet there, so I had to get back in contact to go get my wallet the next day. Friend handed me my stuff back and Schmidt the door. All my stuff was there. And one thing that wasn't mine. A workout t-shirt that said, "No pressure, no diamonds." Story 40. When me and my wife were having Kex before we were married, I glanced over at the TV and that's the exact second she looked at me. So she thought I was banging her while I was watching Family Guy. Story 41. Had a kidney transplant right around 2 years ago now. The transplant was at a teaching hospital. One of the things that happens when you get a transplant is that when they put the new kidney in, they also put a stent in to keep open the ureter, the tube that takes urine to the bladder. Well, 6 weeks after transplant, that stent has to come out. The procedure to get it out is called a cystoscopy. They put a think movable arm with a camera and gripper down your urethra into the bladder, grab the stent and pull it out through your penis. Like I said, this was a teaching hospital, so I show up to my appointment at the urologist rooms in the hospital. The first thing that happens is that a nurse takes you back and has you change into a gown and gets you situated up on a table. She then uses a syringe to fill your urethra with a numbing solution. About 25 minutes later, the urologist comes in the room with the nurse and 3 students, all women. He gives me the spiel about this being a teaching hospital and tells me that he would like 2 of the students to observe the procedure and the 3rd student to actually perform it under his supervision, of course. She was apparently very close to finishing her studies and becoming a fully fledged urologist. The other 2 students were just doing their needed rotations in different areas to complete their requirements to graduate, but weren't urology focused. That's how I ended up having a woman stick a camera down my penis while 3 others watched. The student performing the procedure did great though. Story 42. Met a girl at a club. She was perfect. Beautiful, pale blue eyes, great body. Likes all the same stupid Schmidt I do. We talk, we like each other, and I end up in her apartment. We're both naked and ready to do some pants gymnastics when she gets on all fours on her bed, and I see it. A straight, perfect line of Schmidt on her ass. Me, being a bit of a germaphobe, immediately start dry heaving and run to the bathroom. I ponder my next move. Maybe ask her to shower with me. Maybe tell her straight up. But my mind is blocked with the sight of other person's refuse smeared on the ass. I just completely lose the boner, and I shamefully say some Schmidt about being too drunk. Unfortunately for me, she was an exchange student, so even when I would have given it a second try, and I suspect she would have been on board too, she went back to her country soon after. Story 43. Here is mine. Not as horrifying as most of yours, but affected me mentally. I was going to a picnic with my boyfriend's family and friends. I looked so cute in my white shorts and top. For whatever reason, we took his dad's car to a vent. His father loved chocolate-covered cherries. I sat on one. I walked around a picnic group looking like I Schmidt myself and had period as well. Story 44. Caught my then boyfriend. How husband by my mom when we were in high school. Apparently she assumed we had keeks at our friend's apartment and not in the comfort of our own homes. We definitely never had kex at our friend's apartment. Had a lot of narrow misses at my boyfriend's house too. The combo of wearing a dress and him wearing basketball shorts made it easy to a moment's notice and pretend we weren't also at a moment's notice. Anyway, no one can complain now, BC. We keep making her cute grandkids. Story 45. My ex used to film me all the time when I would do a funny joke, etc. It was fine at first, but started to get old. So I'd pull out my penis when she started filming, so she couldn't post it. Well, she picked me up one time and I saw her filming me from her car, so I opened the door and started ferociously undoing my pants. Her face went white. I'm FaceTiming my mom. Story 46. My then GF and I went the next big city over to catch a show over a weekend. It was our first weekend away together, so I got us a room at the fanciest hotel I could afford at the time. Reasonably nice 4-star. We were in our 20s at the time, so immediately started having keeks before we were going to go out for the night. GF started her period right in the middle of kex, and honest to God, neither one of us noticed until we finished, and it looked like someone was murdered in the bed. So much discharge. On the sheets, the comforter, the matter, everything. We fled the scene to go have dinner and see the show, and during dinner, we were trying to figure out how to explain this to the front desk and me, thinking how, TF, I'm going to afford to pay for damages. Hours later, we got back to the room and the bed, the comforter, the sheets. Everything was pristine as if it never happened. To this day, I don't know if the nightly turn-down service did us a solid, or we both hallucinated it. Story 47. I had taken my son to the park. He was about 7. It was a Sunday, around lunchtime, and the park was full of parents and kids. My son and I decided to go on the swings, so we were swinging for a while and then we stopped. I leaned backwards in my swing and slipped back a little too far, and my shorts somehow didn't go with me. So now the back of my knees were against the swing with my shorts, and my bare ass and pussy were on display for an entire playground of adults and children. To make matters worse, the only way to get my shorts back on was to continue my backwards naked descent to the ground. Which I did, then quickly tried to pull my shorts up while lying on my back. Somehow, my son was clueless. I viciously whispered at him, "We have to go." "Why?" he said. "We just got here." I promised him chicken nuggets and we flew out of that park. I have no clue how many people actually saw all of me, but I refused to make eye contact with anyone. Story 48. I was on vacation with my auntie once to the UK. The apartment we were staying in belonged to my other auntie and didn't have enough beds to cater for us all. I ended up sleeping on the couch with my cousin and her little brother, my other cousin. A few nights before we were to fly home, I was watching the TV on the couch with my cousins sleeping. My girl cousin woke up and came over to me to sit next to me watching the TV. Next thing I knew, she pulled my head around for a kiss, and she did. I was disgusted at first, but she said nobody has to know. So I guess I had also been horny for a few days and said, damn it. We made out, she gave me a hand job. I fingered her and we had keeks the whole night. We did this every night until we left the UK. Since we came back though, I haven't spoken to her since. She keeps asking when we can see each other again through texts, but I don't respond. I wasn't thinking straight those couple of nights and I'm forever gonna live with the regret that I let my cousin do me. Damn, awkward. Story 49, bidet party at a friend's house. House has 2 bathrooms. One guest one and one that for some reason has 2 doors. One door connects to the kitchen and the other connects to the master bedroom. I had to go, so I went for the guest one first and someone was in there, so I took off for the other one. I get in there and start doing my business. A few minutes in and I hear moaning coming from the bedroom side. Moaning / grunting / keek sounds. I'm like lowall them banging it out mid BBQ. Must be good BBQ. I finish my business, flush the toilet, and cough. Really loudly. I hear an almost inaudible, "Oh, Schmidt," followed by my friend giggling. I walk out of the restroom, exiting out the kitchen side, just in time to find my friend and his wife coming out. She's flushed red in the face, and he's got a Schmidt-eating grin. I smiled and high-fived him as he made his way back to the BBQ. Story 50? One time, a woman and I are leading up to Kexi times, and with my finger, I feel something inside of her. I must be imagining things. But I swear I feel something again. At the risk of embarrassing myself or her, I ask as gently as I could, "Is there something ... in ... you?" After the longest 3-second pause in history, she runs out of the room. Several minutes later, she comes back quite relieved and states everything is fine. She left her tampon in there from several days ago, but she isn't on her period now, so we are all systems go. We just Netflixed that night. No chill all. Story 51. An ex and I went to a hotel to have kex. And when the guy showing us the room opened the door, it turns out it was already set up with roses in the shape of a heart in the bed. No one was expecting it. My guess is that the couple that had that room set up canceled, and also they didn't told the guy. So it was just the 3 of us just standing around staring at the bed for like a good minute because no one had any clue of what was going after. He left my ex and I just burst out laughing because of how awkward it was, lol. Story 52. Was being fingered in my parents' basement at 16 by my BF at the time. He was doing a good job. My eyes were closed, and I was in the moment. Opened my eyes to my mom standing there. I have no clue how long she was there for. She said nothing besides supper's ready, and walked away. We've never brought it up again. Second most awkward was texting with my now husband when I was 17, freshly dating. And I put my phone down for half a second to make a plate for supper, and my mom was reading them all over my shoulder. Again, never brought it up. Story 53. Not very NSFW, but was at a sleepover in middle school for a friend's birthday. 5 of us, 2 beds and a sofa. These 2 girls asked to share a bed as they were very close friends. We turn off the lights and we all go to sleep. I couldn't sleep very well because I was uncomfortable. And probably around 10 minutes in, I start to hear lips smacking and whispering. I just kind of freeze and sit there for what felt like forever, was probably around 5 minutes. They stop and pause for a few seconds. Then one of them asks if anybody was still awake. It was silent in that room for about 30 seconds, and I hear a little bit of a giggle and a sigh of relief. Then the girl on the couch says, "I am," and both myself and the girl next to me follow with "me too." We never discussed it with the 2 girls making out, but the other 3 of us still talk about it all the time. Story 54. When I was like 20, my ex and I, whom both worked at the same place, called into work one day and have kex all morning. We thought no one was home, which normally would be the case. Turns out my mom had that day off too. So awkward. My girl was very vocal. Story 55. I was seeing this nice exchange student from South Korea. We had played around previously, but never had kex. When we did have kex, we were into it for less than a minute. She begins to freak out and begins to cry hysterically, saying, "I think I am pregnant," over and over again. She wanted to go home. So I drove her home. When I realized that she thought I made her pregnant I pulled the car over and gently explained to her that is not how it works. I briefly explained how babies are made since she seemed completely unaware. We also use protection. She eventually calmed down. We never saw each other after that. That is the most awkward situation of my adult life. Story 56. I got a yeast infection in my foreskin when I was 12 years old. The itch was maddening, but I was too embarrassed to ask my parents for help. I was itching my penis so much that the mean girls at my school noticed and started a rumor I was jacking off in class. Unbeknownst to me, the rumor spread like wildfire. One of the mean girls wrote on my school binder, "Hey, extra heart, how's flying? Don't fly too high. You might splash." I had absolutely no idea what it meant, but a popular girl wrote it, so I kept that binder all year. I eventually figured it out. I'm still embarrassed. Girl bullies are savages. Story 57. Me and my fiance pulled off into a field driveway on a gravel road near our house for a quickie on our way home from a wedding. We had family staying at our place for the wedding, so couldn't be rambunctious in the house. A sprayer, agricultural equipment, was coming down the road and we didn't hear it until it crested the hill, so we barely got buttoned back up as it passed. I waved at the guy driving, and he waved back. 3 days later at work, a member of my company's board stopped in and asked, "Must have been out scouting field the other day, huh?" and gave me a sly smile. Turns out he was driving the sprayer. He still jokes on occasion about me scouting fields. Story 58. My house flooded. A pipe in the bathroom burst overnight. A few inches of water all through the house. So the insurance calls in a crew to deal with the water damage. Crew arrives within the hour, and I'm still reeling and in shock. They get to my room. As they move my armoire, the door opens and one of my bad dragons plops out onto the floor. There were several more inside of it, and now the door was wide open. So all these workers are just getting a full view of my shame. I go collect the toy off the floor and gathered the rest into a tote as I died a little inside. Story 59. Had a nosebleed while I was on top of my then GF and dripped blood all over her face. She didn't notice it happened at first, and I had to stop to have the awkward conversation while holding my nose. Story 60. My dad walked in on us once. I also walked in on him masturbating once. That was really weird. We never talked about it and pretended it didn't happen. Both occurrences are unrelated to each other and happened several years apart from each other. Story 61. Not my story, but my best friend's. So by proxy, my buddy was house-sitting for his ex and her family. Her mom loved him. His ex was now very much in love with her new GF. My buddy wanted some of his old belongings back that ex kept, so he totally bumped her bedroom door open. Looking through her things, the man finds the most massive dildo I have ever seen outside of prawn. Like the thing was bigger than his forearm and almost the size of his head. That photo he sent me is burned into my brain. I fear if I get Alzheimer's, I'll be rattling on about monster dildos to my children before I die. Story 62. The time I got a nosebleed while eating ass in the dark. Neither of us were aware until I started tasting metal in my mouth. It was a literal bloodbath and awkward hilarity ensued. Luckily, it didn't stay awkward for long. Cleaned up and got right back to business. Mama didn't raise no quitter. Story 63. Was getting my first BJ at 14 at the girl's house in her parents' basement. Everyone was home, and 10 seconds after commencing with said BJ, her younger sister, probably 7/8, walks downstairs, opens the door, and sees her sister on her knees giving said BJ. Story 64. I was texting this girl back years ago on Snapchat, and in the passion of the moment, I sent my penis pic to my stories instead. I have friends to this day that still remind me, edit. This was so long ago, back when Snapchat had this convoluted ass way to delete Schmidt off your story, so it was up there for at least a good 5 minutes. Story 65. My son and I both got drugged from the same drink, and we got lost, beat up, and robbed. Less than 3 blocks from home, we both needed 10+ stitches. my face, and their arm. Our nails were both filled with scraped-off skin. I'm glad it wasn't worse or further from my house. My roommates heard us yelling and scared off the attackers. There were at least 5 versus the 2 of us. That was pretty awkward to wake up to. Story 66. A girl I was dating once bragged about her lack of gag reflexes. She went to the fridge to find a hot dog and shoved it into her mouth while saying, "Look what I can do." Then she puked all over the floor, still impressed by how confident she was until that happened. Story 67. I jizzed in my ex-girlfriend eye by accident and gave her a very bad eye infection. And that isn't even the worst part. She gave me a UTI as a male, which then prompted the question, "Hey, are you having sex with just me?" Where she said no. And then it was never the same, and we broke up shortly after. Story 68. I was on a 5-hour-long road trip and stopped by to hook up with a guy, and a day earlier, he told me he wanted me to milk his prostate. I was ready to finger his peach when I went in with 2 fingers and felt something squishy. Pulled my fingers out, and it was covered in full, soft, dark brown Schmidt. Not to mention it was in an empty house with no soap or furniture. The smell lingered for hours on that drive, even after I stopped by multiple gas stations to deep clean the Schmidt out of my fingers. Story 69. My parents were out of the house and I was in the mood, so I was masturbating on the recliner with a vibe, and I hear them coming into the front door. I turned off the toy, got my shorts up, but the vibe fell into the recliner. They came in and I knew I couldn't look for it without them finding out what happened. So I was like, okay, I'll grab it tonight when they're asleep. That night, my mom discreetly handed me something wrapped in tissue and said, "The dog brought this to me," and walked away. It was my vibrator. Story 70. Having kex with an ex and my best friend spent the night. Her and I started kex in the morning, and I hear best friend coming up the stairs. I yell, "Don't come up here and balls deep." He carries on up the stairs, opens my bedroom door, sees me on top of her and goes, "Oh, you were serious," shuts the door and goes back downstairs. Her and I laughed and then carried on. Super awkward. Super not awkward. Story 71. Got distracted while taking a piss, ran out the door right after and walked by my neighbor, said hi to him, but he acted really weird and shocked and almost stumbled off the sidewalk, getting out of my way. I was like, "That was weird. What's up with Bill?" in my head. Then I turned around slowly to look at him to see what was wrong, and as I did, I felt a breeze. Yep, I had never put my penis away. Story 72. He kept sending me penis pics I neither asked for nor wanted. We're from a small town where everybody knows everybody. I told him if he didn't stop, I was going to text his mother. He kept it up. So, I did. Next text I got was a long apology about how men shouldn't be inappropriate like the son, that he was sorry and would be going back to church. When I texted his mom, she got in the car, drove to his place. And that's why he apologized and started going to church again. Lol. He met a nice girl there. They're married now, lol. Story 73. I did anal with my GF in her car when I was a teen. We started to get dressed and I smelled Schmidt and knew right away my dong was covered in it, and I went, "Well, this is pretty Schmitty," she cried, and I had to use my boxers to clean my dirty dong and console her. Story 74. I'd finished up a first date with a woman and we ended up at my place. Things were getting hot. We were making out and both semi-nude on my sofa. Then she gets on top, grabs both of my hands and asks if can we pray together before going any further. I'm sporting a boner, ready for a Jimmy hat, staring at her tits that I was just sucking on, and suddenly, "Our Lord who art in heaven." Story 75. My partner asked me to do a kexi dance for her. We were in a hotel room and I was really getting into it, stripping and shaking my ass, etc. I got up on the hotel chair, so I was kneeling on it and holding the back, grinding away. I leaned too far forward and the chair tipped over, slow motion. Our eyes locked in horror as I, butt naked, rode that chair down and slid into the wall. Story 76. I was changing tops at a friend's house. Then a guy I never met, who was my friend's friend too, barged in just as I went topless. I was so embarrassed I didn't say anything and he just stared at me and then left like he was on fire. But it's all cool. That was the same guy who turned out to be the love of my life, my late husband. Story 77. Right after we both finished, I slid my leg on the sheets to get off her. The sweat on me made it sound like the loudest, nastiest fart to the point where I didn't even bother trying to prove anything. Story 78. Oh, the memories. One memory that I believe takes the cake was that I was talking to multiple girls in high school. I was planning on meeting one of them in the girls' bathroom, and when I messaged her that I was there, 3 of them showed up and poured mop water on me when I was sitting in a stall. That was a wet walk home. Not the reason, but I'm not a cheater anymore. Story 79. About 10 coworkers helped me move into a new apartment. I was in the kitchen getting beers for folks when they turned on the TV and hit play on the VCR. Video of me having kex with another coworker starts playing. I'd only been working there for 6 months and knew none of them beforehand. Story 80. When I was a kid, my mom forced me to let my younger cousin use my PSP as her. My aunt and said cousin were in my mom's room watching TV. I was focused on the TV when I hear moaning blast from my PSP. She played a video I had downloaded, and they all laughed at me. Story 81. was at a friend's lake house after graduating high school. One of the girls was into me, so I went for it. We had keks in a bedroom with big windows looking in. It was nighttime, so it was dark in the room, but we had a TV on. Everyone else was outside the room watching in from the windows. Story 82. I met this woman online and drove to meet her at a park near her house. 10 minutes later, we are on her bed. I finished with her on top, and while I'm still inside her, she looks at me and says, "I guess I'm your girlfriend now." Story 83. I butt-dialed my mother while I was doing the deed. She hung up and called me back and asked if I was okay. She said she heard what sounded like a woman crying. It's been a year and it still pops into my mind like a cringy bullet of regret. Story 84. When I was in my early teens, 11, 12, I was at my grandmother's trailer. After using the bathroom, I went to zip up and got stuck in the fly. The worst part of the whole ordeal was having to get my mother to help unzip me, all while my grandmother was present. Story 85. Told this before, but was dating a girl that liked spanking, and I was severely opposed to hitting a girl. She convinced me to try for her sake, and I was just getting into it, hearing her enjoying it when her dad came in. That was fun. Story 86. Walked in on my roommate in a dorm room. He was in mid-ejaculation, spurts flying up over his chest, and he just looked at me helplessly. I backed out. Hours later, I just said I saw nothing, and that was all that was ever said.